On my 65th birthday, I discovered an incredible surprise waiting at my daughter-in-law's door. The sun was just creeping over the horizon when I woke up, the familiar scent of motor oil and gasoline strangely mixing with a whiff of sawdust in my memory. Today, of all days, I couldn't shake the feeling of what could have been a dust-covered dream of chisels and wood. I pulled on my faded mechanic-esque coveralls and headed to the garage, the weight of unfulfilled hopes thick in the air. My heart was a menagerie of emotions as I thought about the intricate toys my father used to carve, how proud he was of his creations. It hurt. A hollow ache in my chest revealed itself like a poorly stitched seam. I had always respected hard work, my career as a mechanic had earned that, but the thought of my father's craftsmanship gnawed at my gut. A quick wrench turn, a grease-stained hand, but what about the beauty that could emerge from wood? I questioned whether I'd become too comfortable in this life. Lunch with Mike and Julia felt like it would be just another quiet affair, but as I approached their home, that feeling shifted. Out front, a wooden door gleamed, sunlight danced on its surface, revealing delicate carvings. Each depiction pulled me in a graduation, the moment I held Mike for the first time, my wedding day. Bewilderment shot through me. Who would go to such lengths for an old man just trying to earn a living fixing cars? Jack. Julia's voice broke through my reverie, bright as sunshine. Her infectious energy made her the perfect match for Mike. I managed a smile but felt a strange tension stirring. Come look. It's a surprise for you. My birthday celebrations don't need to be extravagant, I replied, but she waved me off, leading me inside. My breath hitched as I took in the sight a gallery of forgotten woodworking projects. Every piece, each tool, lovingly restored by Julia's hands. Memories flooded back, a childhood spent in wood shavings, the thrill of creation. Yet, alongside the warmth was fear. The life I'd built as a mechanic began to feel like an anchor. What if I dive into this and fail? What if I lose stability? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Julia handed me the keys to a small workshop she had secured nearby. My heart raced, a collision of elation and dread. Could I really step away from what's familiar? The idea swirled like a cyclone, tearing through my sense of self. Suddenly, the walls of my life felt like a prison, but I was afraid to step outside. Would the community, who saw me as the hard-working mechanic, embrace the artist I longed to become? As I stood at the threshold of this new chapter, the knot in my stomach tightened further. I hesitated, grappling with a torrent of doubt. Tearing my eyes from the sculptures that elicited pride but exposed vulnerability, I realized something monumental was at stake. Not just for me, but for my family and the legacy of my father. Just then, a knock at the door pierced through my turmoil, jolting me from my thoughts. What awaited me on the other side would challenge everything I believed about who I was, and where my life was headed. I took a deep breath, bracing myself as I opened the door to reveal a figure cloaked in shadow. It was a man I recognized from the neighborhood, a former woodworking shop owner, Henry, someone I used to admire from afar but had never mustered the courage to approach. Jack, he said, his voice steady yet layered with intent. I heard about your father and what he meant to this community. I wanted to offer my services as you embark on this new journey. His eyes flickered with something deeper, an unspoken understanding passing between us. What do you mean? I asked hesitantly, every fiber of my being questioning whether I deserved this opportunity. I know what it's like to feel trapped in the easy life, and I can see you've got the potential for something greater. He gestured towards the workshop keys in my hand. Consider this a chance to step beyond what feels comfortable. Let me help you refine your craft. The knot in my stomach twisted tighter. I was honored but overwhelmed. Could I truly abandon the familiar machinations of my mechanic life to chase an elusive dream of artistry? I don't think I can, I stammered, securing the keys tightly in my palm as if they were an anchor pulling me back to safety. Think of it this way, you've already taken the first step by acknowledging your passion, he urged. You have skills. All you need is guidance. The risk comes with growth. Each word bore weight, and I felt the fear of failure holding me back like a vice. As we discussed ideas for my woodworking, I noticed the edge of excitement forging its way through my hesitation. There was a flicker of hope, the possibility of discovery began to emerge. I pictured myself working, the scent of wood shavings in the air, channeling my father's legacy instead of merely comparing myself to it. Meet me tomorrow morning at the workshop. It's time to embrace the art of creation, he said, and just as quickly as he arrived, he departed, leaving me alone with my conflicting thoughts. What if I immersed myself in this world and failed? A haunting fear pooled in my gut like oil slicks on asphalt. Conversely, what if I succeeded? The visions of my father's proud smile lingered, and I yearned to feel that joy, to carry on his legacy with not just tools but artful craftsmanship. In that longing flickered a resolution to move forward, to confront those doubts head-on. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering about tomorrow. Could this man, this stranger, truly unlock something within me? Was the fire buried beneath years of neglect just waiting for kindling? Slowly, the embers of doubt began to fade, replaced by a growing determination. However, as I fell asleep, the weight of untested aspirations lingered. In the depths of night, they morphed into dreams filled with both hope and anxiety, intertwining as I sought balance between my mechanic's hands and the artist's heart. When the sun broke the next day, a newfound sense of urgency propelled me from bed. Today was a decision day. Would I step into that workshop, embracing the unknown? In the back of my mind, a question loomed larger than ever. What if I found I had talent hidden within me, waiting to be discovered? With the workshop keys clutched tightly in my hand, I stepped into the unknown, determined to find out what lay ahead. And as I approached the doors, the uncertainty of what awaited me on the other side sent shivers down my spine. A confrontation with my true potential was imminent. As I turned the key in the lock, a wave of anticipation mixed with trepidation washed over me. The door creaked open, revealing a workshop filled with sunlight filtering through the grimy windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the still air. The smell of aged wood was intoxicating, wrapping around me like an embrace. I stepped inside, the sound of my footsteps muffled by the clutter of sawdust and forgotten dreams strewn across the floor. Henry was already there, positioning a large block of maple on a workbench, his hands methodical and assured. He looked up, his gaze steady, as if he could see the turbulence swirling inside me. Welcome, Jack. Are you ready to begin? I wanted to say yes, to leap into this new venture with both feet, but hesitation clung to me like some unwanted shadow. I'm not sure I know where to start, I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. There's no need to rush, he replied, his tone gentle but firm. We'll take it step by step. Create something that speaks to you. A simple statement, yet it set off a cacophony of insecurities in my mind. What if what spoke to me was not worthy of anyone's attention? Let us start with a simple project, he suggested, moving toward a drawer filled with tools. He lifted a carving knife, the blade glinting sharply, almost a threat in the face of my self-doubt. You've worked with your hands before, haven't you? As a mechanic, I had shaped metal into functional forms, but crafting something purely artistic felt reckless. I've always fixed things, Henry. This feels different. He nodded, his presence unyielding. And that's exactly why you're here. To transform what you know into something new. It's time for you to break free from your own limitations. The word struck deep. I felt the weight of my reservations pressing down, but beneath it, a flicker of rebellion ignited. If I allowed myself to remain anchored by fear, I would never discover who I could become. The possibility of failure didn't scare me as much as the thought of inaction did. Okay, I said, pushing back the swirling doubts. What do you want me to do? Henry smiled, the warmth seeping into my nerves. Let us start by sketching out a design. Think of something inspired by your past, perhaps a tribute to your father. As I picked up a pencil, my mind raced. What would it look like? The quick sketches felt awkward at first, the lines crude under my unpracticed hand. But with each stroke, my confidence began to build. Memories of my father flooded back his patience, the way his hands moved through grain and shape, each piece a story. "This is good," Henry said, studying my rough outline. "You're starting to connect with the material, Jack. Let that guide you." Feeling a burgeoning sense of pride in my creation, I realized I was not just trying to honor my father, I was charting my own path, one crafted by the messiness of discovery. I had spent too long in the confines of machinery, and here, in this moment, exposing the artist within felt liberating. As I turned the block of wood over, ready to make my first cut, a jolt of apprehensive excitement surged through me. Suddenly, I understood this was not just a new trade, it was a confrontation with myself. What if I not only had talent, but a voice derived from my experiences? Before I could second-guess myself, I pressed the knife into the wood, the blade biting firm yet tender as I began shaping my first artwork. Time became elastic. The outside world faded until only the wood and my hands mattered. Hours passed before I stumbled upon what was emerging, a small figure resembling a mechanic wrapped in the embrace of creation, suggesting a man comfortable in both worlds. "See," Henry said, breaking my concentration gently. "You are discovering your talent, one cut at a time." With that simple affirmation, I saw a flicker of the artist I could truly become. The excitement surged, mingling with anxiety, transforming into resolve, but as much as I felt that spark of glowing potential, in the corner of my mind lingered the haunting question, could I really sustain this newfound creative fire, or would I fall back into the safe shadows, resigned to merely fix what was broken? The workshop felt alive around me, but outside the serene sanctuary, life was relentless. Would the whispers of doubt overpower the echoes of creation? That question lingered, and I couldn't shake it off. I was about to face the most challenging project of all, the fight against the doubts that clung to my soul like the heavy scent of sawdust in the air. As I carved deeper into the wood, each stroke resonated within me, drawing up emotions tightly woven into the fabric of my being. The figure began to take shape, its identity emerging as I chiseled away the rough exterior. My heart raced with each delicate incision, a visceral reminder of my father's legacy, and an awakening of my own potential. Henry watched, his presence a steady anchor amidst my swirling thoughts. "Focus on the connection, Jack. The wood will reveal what you need to express." But how could I focus when my mind danced in circles? Questions bubbled to the surface, each one louder than the last. Was this mere whimsy or the beginnings of something profound? As I shifted my grip on the knife, a deeper fear bubbled up. What if this endeavor could disrupt my carefully constructed life as a mechanic? Pushing back the unease, I leaned into the task, pouring in my memories days spent watching my father, the way he transformed ordinary wood into something extraordinary. With each chip that fell away, I felt his presence guiding me, urging me to forge my own path. The workshop seemed to hum with energy, a thoroughfare of creativity forcing me to acknowledge the stubborn blocks I carried. Hours melded into a haze of focus and determination. But beneath that surface was a disquieting realization. I had lived too long adhering to safety and structure, stifling what I had only recently begun to uncover. "Break through that hesitation," Henry prompted, as if sensing my internal battle. "What is stopping you from exploring? What is stopping you from fully embracing this side of yourself?" His words struck like lightning. What was stopping me? Fear of failure? Fear of judgment? Or perhaps the specter of choice, the weight of my decision to pursue this uncharted path rather than the comfortable, predictable grind of my old ways? I paused, the blade hovering over the wood, an embodiment of my indecision. If I committed fully to this exploration, what would it mean for my career? Could I bear the thought of leaving behind the safety of the garage, the predictable income, the routine that had defined my identity? I could feel each decision weighing heavily upon my shoulders, a stark reminder of the risk involved in crafting something purely for the sake of creation. "Every masterpiece begins as a quiet moment of doubt," Henry declared, slicing through my tangled thoughts. "You must confront that doubt. Allow it to transform into something productive." Breath hitching, I considered his challenge. What if I took the risk? What if I embraced the discomfort? Each motion could be a rebellion against the fears that sought to paralyze me. The thought ignited something buried deep. An instinctive urge to create was violent against the inertia of inaction. With a newfound fervor, I resumed carving. Each cut became a metaphor for my struggle, a rejection of the complacency I had allowed to infiltrate my life. The figure began to reflect not just skill but resilience, a rough-hewn worker standing strong amidst the chaos of an unfinished piece. I realized then that the sculpture was more than homage, it was a testament to my journey, to the essence of who I was and who I aspired to be. As sunlight waned, casting long shadows in the workshop, I caught sight of my reflection in a darkened window across the room. It was a reflection of uncertainty, yes, but also courage. I felt the burning need to be more than just a mechanic, a creator, an artist, a father who honors his past while forging ahead into an unknown future. But just as hope surged, a sudden reality check hit me. The world outside was relentless, its demands poised to reclaim my attention. Closing time loomed, and with it, the clamoring worries of bills, expectations, and the life I had always known. Could I sustain this flame when the day turned dark? I hesitated once more, the knife poised above. Would my resolution wavered, entangled in the roots of my previous life? Would I have the strength to continue this transformative journey, even in the face of inevitable doubt? A heavy silence enveloped us both, tension electric in the air. I was teetering on the precipice of a decision that would define my future. The next moment would require me to confront that fear head-on, but would I be willing to step beyond the threshold into my true calling? The moment of truth hovered, pregnant with possibility but shadowed by uncertainty. With the weight of indecision pressing down like the ceiling of the workshop filled with lingering wood dust, Jack glanced around, noting the tools scattered on the workbench, each one imbued with the potential of creation. Unfinished pieces welcomed him, whispering promises of purpose. But the world beyond that small realm was a potent reminder of the grind awaiting him: endless bills, demanding routine, and the subtle pull of a life spent clinging to the familiar. He took a deep breath, inviting the coolness of the air to clear his mind. Perhaps now was not the time for fear, perhaps it was the time for exploration. His hand steadied as he gripped the knife once more, the blade now a symbol of promise to himself to carve out a new identity. Henry's voice, gentle but firm, echoed in his ears. Allow it to transform into something productive. Jack let the thought simmer. What if he reframed the situation entirely? The woodworking wasn't merely an escape, it was an act of defiance against self-imposed limitations. The piece before him transformed from raw wood into a reflection of his fight against complacency. As his knife sliced through the wood, Jack found himself lost in the rhythm of creation. He observed subtle changes in his mindset. The fear of failure gradually rumbled beneath something more powerful, an exhilarating blend of liberation and purpose. Maybe, just maybe, there was room for both his existing identity and this burgeoning artist within. Each chisel left behind refined wood shavings like discarded fears. He envisioned the sculpture standing tall, a representation of the possibilities that awaited if he bravely embraced this newfound path. It could redefine him beyond mechanics, an artist of sorts, a storyteller who carved with feeling. But then, shadows crept in, weaving their way back into his thoughts. Would this exploration dilute his identity as a dependable mechanic? The car shop required his attention, demanded his dedication. What if the pursuit of an artistic endeavor faltered like any poorly carved piece? What if he was ridiculed, or worse yet, what if he failed his family who relied on him? Anxiety coursed through him again, affecting his precision as he sculpted. His hands trembled with uncertainty, and he had to choose whether to nurture that doubt or crush it. In that moment, Henry shifted in his chair, sensing Jack's internal tumult. Let it out, Jack. Speak it, don't bottle it up. The wood has a story, and so do you. I don't want to fail, Jack admitted, the words tumbling out as if they had been imprisoned for years. What if this doesn't turn into anything? What if I'm just chasing a fleeting dream? Every dream begins with the soul taking a chance. If you never explore, you'll never know what could blossom. Embrace the risk, Henry urged, an unwavering glimmer of faith shining in his eyes. The truth of those words possessed weight, forcing Jack to wrestle anew with his emotions. This moment weighed heavier than decisions made at the car shop or even at the family dinner table. This was rooted in self-discovery, an evolution he could no longer deny. Simultaneously, he acknowledged the reality of his life outside the workshop. His family, his responsibilities, these were not burdens but reasons for growth. Embracing this challenge could inspire them, too. The notion sparked a flicker of hope mixed with undeniable fear. His journey would not just affect him, but those he loved as well. That he returned his attention to the wood, resolving to breathe life into the figure with a renewed determination. Carving became more than a craft, it transformed into a means to genuinely explore his identity. As shadows grew longer, Jack worked with fierce dedication, feeling each technique illuminate layers of his fear and longing. Yet within that fervor, confusion brewed about how to reconcile this path with the mechanistic life he knew. Would there be a moment when the scales tipped too far? Where his passions could overshadow his responsibilities? As he recognized that fine line, the blade slipped. A sharp pang stung his finger, snapping him back to reality. And in that physical reminder of vulnerability, clarity emerged. He would have to pave a path where both his current world and this creative journey could coexist. But the question hung heavy in the air: was he prepared to undertake the first steps toward that reconciliation? The sculpture loomed before him, half-formed yet brimming with potential. Jack knew that addressing this tension would require new avenues of effort and perhaps even sacrifice. It demanded decisions that resonated, not just for him, but for those around him. Suddenly, Jack felt a surge of inspiration, coupled with a thrill of anxiety, igniting a bold thought: what if he showcased his work? A local art fair, perhaps? The seed of an idea curled within him, but could he commit to this uncharted journey? As he turned over the prospect in his mind, uncertainty beckoned. Could the artist and mechanic coexist? What would that fully look like? The stakes rose, and Jack knew that the struggle was just beginning, with a future rife with choices and new definitions of identity waiting to be unveiled. Jack stepped away from the half-formed sculpture, his heart pounding as the idea of showcasing his work settled in. It felt like a tightrope walk, an exhilarating mix of exhilaration and dread. Would the community embrace him as an artist, or would they regard him merely as a mechanic trying to play with wood? The thought gnawed at him, but it also sparked a flicker of something he hadn't embraced in years: bravery. His fingers examined the cut on his hand, a small reminder that progress often comes with risk. He turned the blade in his hand, and the metal gleamed under the dim workshop light, reflecting not just danger but potential. It now symbolized a call to action, to step into a world that went beyond the grease and grime of the workshop and into the vast expanse of self-expression. Pacing the workshop, Jack felt compelled to make a tangible commitment, one that could carve a deeper path into his identity. Inspiration struck again. What if I host a small showing right here? He muttered aloud, the words defying the silence of the workshop. It was an intimate idea that could first reach out to family and friends, creating a cushion of support while testing the waters. But doubt quickly countered this spark. Would family gatherings turn into awkward showcases of mediocrity? What if his relatives laughed behind his back? All these concerns ricocheted inside his mind, making him halt. He leaned against the workbench, hands clenched into fists, balancing the reality of his fears against the idea of vulnerability in showcasing his art. Henry's words echoed softly, "Embrace the risk." What a challenge that presented. Undoubtedly, the fear of failure was real, but what was even more daunting was the thought of stagnation, of living on the outskirts of passion without a chance to discover where it could lead. Jack needed to confront this fear with calculated action. He pulled out a roll of drawing paper and sketched rudimentary concepts for his showcase. The outline felt therapeutic. Soon, the ideas flowed like sawdust from a chisel. Friend and family, each list began to grow, inspiring conversations about what he would showcase, the pieces he wanted to carve, and how he wished to convey stories through them. Even as ideas flourished, his mind lurked with questions. The mechanic in him resisted, arguing practicality over passion. Will this take away from improving my skills at the shop? He pondered. Was he simply chasing a fleeting dream while letting everyday responsibilities slide? Those worries pressed heavily, yet he couldn't shake off the budding excitement that each day brought. Later that night, catapulted by inspiration, Jack found himself sifting through images of past art fairs online. He noticed a common thread: a sense of community that fostered growth, inspiration, and the celebration of individuality. That image lingered in his mind like a beacon, and gradually the walls he built around himself began to crack. Perhaps he could contribute to that community too. As days turned into weeks, he meticulously sculpted, pushed by the need to produce pieces that resonated with not just him but those who would view them. Every chip of wood brought renewed focus, a deliberate act of acknowledging his creative identity. Yet, despite the progress, shadows still hovered. His responsibilities at the shop loomed larger, demanding attention and loyalty. One afternoon, as Jack tuned up an old engine, the usual sounds of clanking tools echoed around him, but all he could think about was wood shavings and block planes. His thoughts wandered, imagining the emotional connections his sculptures might evoke. Yet guilt bubbled up. Was he neglecting his livelihood? The tension simmered as he wiped the sweat from his brow. Could he transform? Could he craft a life where both identities coexisted, without one overshadowing the other? Looking at the half-finished engine before him, he realized this was not just about sculpting shapes from wood but about molding his life into something uniquely his own. Just then, the bell over the shop door jingled. A familiar face entered. His daughter-in-law, Sarah, who beamed with enthusiasm. The urgency in her voice pierced through his brewing turmoil. "Jack, you need to see this. It's important." Her words hung in the air, a thread of tension pulling at him as he glanced around the shop, caught between the weight of his duties and the emerging world of his artistry. What revelation awaited him behind her urgent call? Jack could feel the approaching storm of change swirling around him, and the stakes rose higher than ever before. Jack barely processed the urgency in Sarah's tone. He felt the heat of uncertainty rise, mingling with his curiosity. She ushered him to the small waiting area near the reception desk, a space cluttered with old tools and forgotten projects, remnants of his life spent in the workshop where a separate reality existed, one filled with engines and grease rather than art and wood. "Look," she said, pulling out her phone and turning it to face him. His heart sank and soared simultaneously as he stared at the screen. On it, a vibrant flyer showcased an art competition with a theme that resonated deeply with him: rediscovering roots. The deadline for submissions was less than 2 weeks away. Flashes of determination and fear danced in his mind. "Jack, you have to submit something. This is your chance." Sarah's excitement flickered, igniting something in him that felt both thrilling and terrifying. The flyer was crisp and colorful, promising an opportunity that called out to his subconscious. He envisioned his sculptures, yearning to speak stories of resilience and labor like his father and grandfather before him, but the doubts soon crept back in, voices weaving through his thoughts. Would he be ready in time? What if his work wasn't good enough to even be considered? "I don't know, Sarah. I've barely started with my pieces. It seems so daunting." Jack winced at the flood of self-doubt, words flowing like an apology for not believing in himself. "Jack, you have a gift," she insisted, her eyes resembling pools of unwavering faith. "Don't let that fear hold you back. Do it for yourself. This could mark a turning point." That's exactly what it was: fear. The remnants of hesitance nipped at his heels, taunting him with the notion that he was merely an imposter, a mechanic dabbling in artsy dreams. But something deep within him flickered. Was it bravery again? If he wanted to embrace his identity as an artist, he needed to face the music, confront his inner critic with resolute determination. As he considered the implications, a small, persistent voice inside whispered, "What if this is who you are meant to be?" Jack's hands shook slightly as he reached for the flyer again. The texture felt smooth against his fingertips, a tangible representation of a moment that could alter the trajectory of his life. "Okay," he murmured, feeling the warmth of resolve build. "But I'll need to work hard. I can't let this slip by." Days flew by in a whirlwind of creativity and distraction. Jack immersed himself in his woodwork, determination driving him through the pre-dawn hours and late into the night. Each piece was a collision of his past with the present, old tools transforming into new art. Sculpted figures and abstract shapes emerged, stories etched into the grain, beckoning to be seen and understood, yet, with the deadline drawing near, the pressure heightened. Responsibilities at the shop mounted too, the weight on his shoulders felt heavier than ever. Each clack of the wrench and roar of the engine drowned out the rhythm of his artistic flow. He was torn between two worlds, feeling as if he didn't belong wholly to either. The night before the submission deadline, Jack lay in bed, restless, his mind replaying every moment of the past week's decisions made, sculptures built, doubts confronted. The enormity of revealing his deepest insecurities crept in once more, a reminder that stepping into the light could mean facing vulnerability. Finally, he rose. There was no turning back. He descended into the workshop, the air thick with the scents of wood and varnish. With each stroke of the chisel and caress of sandpaper, Jack felt his fears dissipate, replaced by an intoxicating blend of hope and ambition. Just as he finished the final details of his main piece, a sculpture resembling two intertwined roots, his heart thrummed with both pride and anxiety. Would it resonate with others? Would it evoke the emotions he intended? As dawn broke, illuminating the workshop with soft golden light, a sudden booming sound interrupted his thoughts, a thud at the door followed by rapid footsteps. The door swung open, and through it rushed a flustered stranger, a man bursting with enthusiasm and ideas that promised to shake Jack's world even further. "Sorry to barge in like this," the man exclaimed, scanning the workshop. "But I heard about your work, and I'm here to talk about a collaborative project. What possibilities lay ahead with this unexpected encounter?" Jack's heart raced anew, both with excitement and dread. He felt the world shifting once again beneath his feet. What he didn't know was how this moment would unearth treasures deep inside him, pushing the boundaries of everything he thought he could achieve. Jack barely had time to process the stranger's enthusiasm before the man's eyes landed on the sculpture resting in the corner of the workshop. It was the piece he had just completed, a testament to the journey he had undergone in the past weeks, a representation of resilience, as he had intended. The man approached it slowly, his gaze intense, assessing. "What an incredible piece!" the stranger exclaimed, his voice rich with genuine admiration. "It captures so much depth. I'm Nolan, by the way." He extended a hand, and Jack took it, feeling a surge of unexpected warmth flood through him. "Jack," he responded, still grappling with the surrealness of the encounter. "What do you mean by a collaborative project?" Nolan's enthusiasm seemed to pour forth like a torrent. "I run a community art initiative focused on connecting artists like yourself with opportunities to create impactful work. We're seeking artists for an exhibition that encourages dialogue about personal histories and cultural roots. Your sculpture resonates with this theme perfectly." Jack's heart raced. This could be the breakthrough he hadn't dared to dream of. But as excitement began to swell within him, stark doubts surged alongside it. Could he really join such an initiative? Was he ready to present himself to the world as an artist? I don't know. I haven't thought about showcasing my work publicly," Jack stammered, each word riddled with hesitation. The memories of self-doubt crept back in, tightening their grip around his renewed sense of purpose, reminding him of inadequacies and fears he had worked so hard to silence. Nolan's eyes softened, sensing Jack's internal conflict. "I get that. But this is a chance to push yourself and explore what you're capable of. These moments of discomfort often lead to the most rewarding growth professionally and personally. You seem to have a unique vision. Don't hold back on sharing it with the world." Jack absorbed his words, feeling a flicker of determination weave through his chest. Perhaps this was the challenge he needed, the nudge toward self-acceptance he had long avoided. The thought of allowing others to view his work was daunting, the fear of judgment loomed over him like a dark cloud. Yet, as he glanced at his sculpture again, he saw the labor of love embedded in the curves and angles. It was born from his experiences, from a lineage of craftsmen who had poured their souls into their workmanship, all stories waiting to be unearthed and told. "Okay," Jack finally said, his voice steadier than he anticipated. "Let us do it. What do I need to prepare?" Nolan beamed, the excitement palpable. "We'll discuss the details, but it's about presenting your work in a way that reflects your story. I believe the fear you're feeling can transform into something powerful. You have a real opportunity here, Jack." After expressing the foundational details of the initiative, they dove deeper into dialogues about creative intentions, the intersection of art and personal ancestry, and the potential impact of shared stories. Jack found himself resonating with Nolan's vision, and slowly, doubts began to dissipate, replaced by a newfound determination to explore his own narrative. As they talked, Jack felt a budding ambition spark within him. He realized that this wasn't just about art, it was about embracing vulnerability and creating connections through narrative mediums. He envisioned his work stirring emotions, igniting conversations about identity, labor, and heritage. Hours slipped away, yet Jack remained enraptured. By the time they wrapped up their discussion, the sun had dipped lower in the sky, casting warm shadows across his workshop. The deadline for the art competition had come and gone, but here was another opportunity to step into his truth. Nolan's parting words resonated. "Remember, Jack, the magic lies in your authenticity. Don't shy away from revealing your roots. They define you in ways that the world needs to see." As the door clicked shut behind him, Jack remained, heart racing anew with determination. But amidst the swelling excitement, one question loomed large. What would he uncover about himself when pushed to share those intimate pieces of his life? With the stakes raised and his path illuminated, Jack knew the journey was just beginning. The moment to confront the echoing fears within him drew near. Would he rise and accept the challenge, or would doubt once again steer him from his destiny? Jack sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the weight of his decision. He could feel the pulse of his heart thrumming in his ears, a reminder of the responsibility he now carried. Sharing his story wasn't just about featuring his artwork in an exhibition, it was a chance to connect deeply with his own identity. The thoughts swirled chaotically in his mind, refracting doubt and hope in equal measure as he glanced again at the sculpture, the embodiment of his struggles and triumphs. Each curve told a story, a memory etched into its surface. Circumstances beyond his control had shaped this narrative, but he was the one who had given it life through his craftsmanship. He realized that by opening up to others, he might finally bridge the gap between who he was and who he wanted to be. Driven by this realization, Jack pulled out a notebook and began jotting down ideas. What was his story? Where did it intersect with the broader human experience? As the words flowed, he unearthed fragments of his past he had long buried, the initial thrill of being mentored by his father, the painful fracture when they had lost that connection, and the profound understanding he had gained from both joy and sorrow. Yet beneath the rush of revelations lay a treacherous sea of anxiety. Doubts challenged his burgeoning confidence. Were his experiences significant enough to merit an audience? Would they understand, or would they judge? He struggled with the thought of scrutiny, a specter of criticism looming ominously. No stranger would see his vulnerabilities without unearthing every little insecurity. Taking a deep breath, Jack pushed through the trepidation. This was part of the journey. Every artist faced the blank canvas, the empty page. It was a necessary prelude to creation. What if he reframed vulnerability as strength? What if allowing others to glimpse his flaws catalyzed deeper connections? As days passed, Jack immersed himself in preparation. He transformed the workshop into a creative sanctum, his inspiration accruing like dust settling upon the shelves. On the surface, the workshop seemed cluttered, yet amidst the organized chaos lay a newfound clarity. He arranged sketches illustrating his experiences and refined the sculpture's narrative to encompass the emotional tapestry he wished to convey. Despite his progress, there were moments of stark panic. Jack found himself standing in front of the mirror, staring deeply into his own eyes, questioning his readiness. Every artistic endeavor bore risks, yet every risk held the potential for unparalleled growth. One muggy afternoon, he decided to visit the local library. He found inspiration in the works of artists who had laid bare their souls. The resilience and courage rippling through their stories mirrored what he felt within. Each story read felt like a coaxing whisper, urging him to confront his fears rather than shy away from them. As he returned to his workshop, he felt a surge of determination. His path was demanding, yet the act of creating was an act of defiance, a rejection of fear, a pause to celebrate his heritage. He became more convinced of the transformative power his narrative could offer, not just to him but to others navigating similar trepidation. Jack understood that vulnerability might become his most powerful ally if leveraged right. It was a paradox. In revealing his insecurities, he'd liberate not just himself but potentially resonate with others yearning for authenticity. The date of the exhibition drew closer, and with every passing day, Jack felt himself inching closer to revelation. With each stroke of the paintbrush, each shaping of clay, he was sculpting not only his artwork but crafting the very essence of who he was, a journey laid bare, a human experience ripe for sharing. Yet the night before the exhibition, rest eluded him, and uncertainty crept back with a vengeance. Would his leap of faith be met with applause, or would it lead to disappointment? Jack remained restless, yearning for reassurance but confronting himself instead. The moment of truth was fast approaching, one that could redefine him as an artist and as a person entirely. What awaited just beyond that threshold? The ambiguous interplay of revelation and rejection became his final test. Would he rise to confront it, or retreat again into the shadow of doubt? The day of the exhibition dawned crisp and bright. Jack felt the weight of his decision pressing against his chest, palpable anxiety mixing with anticipation. The workshop had transformed into an intimate gallery, adorned with his creations, each piece breathing life into the stories locked within him. As he approached the venue, he realized he had changed profoundly. No longer the hesitant mechanic clinging to routine, he was emerging as an artist, a man determined to weave his narrative into the fabric of shared experiences. He stepped inside, greeted by the hum of vibrant chatter and laughter, the scent of fresh wood filling the air. People flowed through the space, their eyes drawn to the sculptures. He watched as they studied the intricate designs and pausing to appreciate the emotion within the curves and lines. It was exhilarating to see them engaging with his work. For the first time, Jack felt a sense of belonging, no longer an outsider but a creator of stories that begged to be told. Despite the buzz around him, Jack's heart raced with uncertainty. How would they react? Would they see the rawness of his experience? As he moved among the crowd, he caught snippets of conversation, feelings of nostalgia, pride, and understanding reflected back at him like shards of glass glinting in sunlight. Then, a voice broke through the cacophony. Nolan's. Jack, come over here. I want you to meet someone. Jack turned, instinctively smoothing his hands over the fabric of his shirt, and approached. There beside Nolan stood an art critic, her expression eager and engaged. Jack, this is Marissa. She runs the local arts magazine and has a keen eye for talent, Nolan introduced, his pride palpable. Jack felt himself flush under her scrutiny but steadied his breath. Your pieces are extraordinary, Jack, she said, her voice creating ripples of warmth that soothed his nerves. They invite conversation and reflection. I'd love to schedule a time to discuss featuring your work in our next issue. Really? Jack's voice came out as a whisper. A seed of doubt crept in momentarily, but it was quickly replaced by the realization of his achievement. Yes. Your sculptures are captivating, they resonate deeply, she continued. This isn't just art, it's a dialogue about heritage, identity, and transformation. As he stood there, the fog of uncertainty began to clear. Recognition washed over him. This was what he had yearned for: validation of his journey and the courage to be vulnerable. The fear that had gripped him just days before began to dissolve, replaced with a burgeoning confidence. Later, as the crowd began to thin, Jack discovered himself engrossed in meaningful conversations. Old friends and new acquaintances commended his work, sharing snippets of their own stories, each connection fortifying his resolve. Your father would be proud, Sarah whispered as she clasped his arm, eyes bright with pride. At that moment, Jack felt an unparalleled wave of fulfillment. I hope so, he replied, glancing back at the sculpture's symbols of his metamorphosis from mechanic to artisan, each one a tribute not only to his father but also to his own evolution. By the end of the evening, Jack felt transformed. He had stepped beyond the boundaries of safety into a world where his identity as an artist flourished alongside his past. He could harness the skills of a mechanic and the heart of a creator, blending them into something uniquely his. As he left the gallery, renewed and inspired, he found himself texting Nolan, ready to discuss future collaborations. The conversation felt ripe with promise. Jack had succeeded. He had produced art that spoke to his legacy and nurtured his spirit. He had embraced the artistic vulnerability that once paralyzed him, choosing instead to carve his own narrative and inspire others, and with a firm resolution, he whispered to himself, this is just the beginning. As the sun dipped below the horizon, streaks of orange and purple ignited the sky, Jack finally felt at peace. He had achieved more than he could have imagined the opportunity to. Share his voice, embrace his roots, and find community among fellow creators. Take that leap. Choose to explore who you are destined to become. Now is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it matters more than you know. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, your voice is important. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Let us uplift each other in this journey of self-discovery.